Welcome back to the Master Coaches Wednesday Weekly Buzz. My name is Bob Bertucci, joined by fellow Master Coaches, Fran Flory, Mick Haley, and Bill Walton. Our topic for today is pro volleyball in the USA. Today's pro discussion is on the Volleyball League of America, for short, VLA. Now, to get us up to speed and to introduce our guests, I'm going to turn the show over to Master Coach Mick Haley. Mick?
Thank you, Bob. And for all of our listeners out there, you know, over the last 2 years, Master Coach's Weekly Buzz has been constantly researching and trying to figure out what's really happening at the pro level in the United States with volleyball. And in the process, we found League of America and Lloy and Tim several months ago, maybe about 9 months ago, actually. And so today, we want to try to dig into another one of the pro leagues. We have done some work on United Athletes. We've done a lot of work on the Pro Volleyball League for women that's coming in. We've looked at League One called LOVB, and we will have them on for a real serious conversation on June 7th. But today, we get to look at a really special league that looks like it's growing by leaps and bounds. The two people that we have on today are very, very special people. Lloy Ball, the director of external relations for the VLA. I'm sorry, I have trouble with all these letters, guys, but as you know, Lloy is a four-time Olympian, a gold medal winner, a USA national team setter, played pro in Europe at a very, very high level, and came back to the large metropolis of Angola, Indiana, which I'm proud to say is my hometown. I'm very pleased that I'm not the only volleyball player. There's the Powers family, the Wilder family that got into volleyball also, and now Lloyd's come back to be the high school women's coach for Angola High School Hornets. Very proud of that. Besides that, though, what's really unique is Lloy has invested in Angola and invested in volleyball. He built the ball, what do you call it? The ball
Sports Academy?
Ball Sports Academy, which is a beautiful building, and co-sponsored with a hospital in Fort Wayne, who does rehab in the facility. He's really brought income to the northern Indiana little town of Angola, and has been wonderful in that regard. And Tim Falknor, the VLA Director of Player Relations, has been playing and coaching and has administrative experience with the VLA out of Chicago, where he's pretty much involved in everything, including one of the players for the Chicago Icemen in the VLA. Tim also spearheads the Icemen's youth volleyball programming at Midtown Athletic Clubs of Chicago location. And so, gentlemen, thank you for coming on, and I'm so excited to have you here. Lloy, I'm going to start with you, if that's all right. And it's fun because I was in, Lloy is the son of Arnie and Sandy Ball. I was in Arnie and Sandy's wedding, so it's like having a second son here, having him on the show. But Arnie was a longtime coach of the IUPUFW team, men's team in Fort Wayne. Really developed that program from scratch, endowed the program before he left, and certainly Lloy helped because he turned down Bob Knight, who wanted to recruit him for a basketball scholarship to play for his dad, and really took the first Fort Wayne team to the Final Four in the Memorial Coliseum, I believe, in Fort Wayne, Indiana, which was quite fun for me to be there to watch. that. But Lloy, you've done all of these things. You've given back not only to the sport, but to Angola. You've made your parents proud. Tell us a little bit about how you've gotten involved in all of this, and how this is going for you.
Well, one, thanks for that introduction. Proud friend of Mick and his family for many decades, and so we appreciate that friendship. I know my mom and dad do as well, Mick. Yeah, who would have thought I would have left the town of 2000, Woodburn, Indiana, traveled the world only to come back to live in a different town of 2000 in Angola, Indiana. I always say this, Angola is kind of like Woodburn, but with lakes. And so it's a very nice place. My wife and I have enjoyed living here, raising our children here. You know, it's interesting. I spent my whole life, you know, in kind of the path to try to win this gold medal that Dad and I saw them win in '84. We saw them win in '88. We saw the bronze in '92. I've been playing volleyball my whole life. And so when that was over in '08, you kind of look around and go, now what, right? At the ripe old age of 36, trying to figure out what the next steps are. Obviously putting family first was the next step, but also giving back. My dad has always been a huge proponent of it, as has my mom. Our Christian faith, trying to, you know, realize how blessed we are and try to give some of those things back. So we started a volleyball club, and I had 2 young kids, and we're practicing at the YMCA's, and we got 4 teams, and we're not very good. And then the next year we got 8 teams, and next year we got 12 teams. The next thing you know, I'm buying land and putting up a building, and next thing you know, there's 28 teams. And here we are, this Team Pineapple Club, which everyone thinks is from Hawaii until they see all our players need lots of SPF and realize we're not from Hawaii. And so the volleyball club was kind of the next thing. And then it's going well. And so what can I do now? Well, let's get this high school program where Mick went, Angola High School, back on track. So I do that, and we're doing pretty well. And so when a bunch of us got together after originally USAV Open, right? That's where the best men used to go play. And then that kind of turned into the PVL. You know, the USAV started a league kind of like that. It was at nationals. It was great. Volleyball was wonderful. Then that kind of dissolved. And then there was the NVA and some other leagues. And eventually, Iceman, Tim, and LVC, Chris Hosley, Arizona, Ascension with Vinny, Rising Tide with Daniel. We go, hey, if we really want this to happen, we're going to have to do it ourselves. And so we incorporated in the state of Indiana. We formed a board. It was just the 4 of us to start. And now, as you've going to allude to later, you know, we're over 20 teams and starting women's. And it's been a great 5 years. And I'm excited to continue and hopefully make this the next passion project on the Lloyd Ball bucket list.
Tim, I'll jump to you real quick. How did you get involved with this guy? I mean, this guy's scary. He gets his hand in everything and anything, and it always grows. How did you get involved?
You know, it was actually a very organic process. I originally went to Carthage College to play and ended up leaving because it wasn't the right fit for me. I went overseas and played a season professionally in France, and ultimately returned home because being away from my family and friends and not being able to support my family and some of the things that they were going through wasn't the right fit for me. And so I just found any tournament that I could play, indoor, outdoor. Like Lloyd said, it was, you know, initially it was USAV and playing in the regional tournaments and creating teams, and then going to adult nationals, which eventually turned into as Lloyd said, the PVL and other leagues. And I just kind of ended up, admittedly, at the helm of a team that kind of formed organically. And I found myself in a position where I was working with Lloy, who, when I was in high school, I was like, that's who I want to be, like, as a player. I was, you know, I graduated high school 2 years before he won his gold medal. And then a few years later, there were a series of adult tournaments, non-USAV, that were happening across the country, where when he finished playing overseas, we ended up playing against each other. And after 4 or 5 years of him just whooping my butt in his retirement, we ended up becoming friends and connecting. And like he said, we saw these attempts at professional leagues that were not adapting to the culture that was volleyball in the US, and failing to recognize that you can't just create a league the way that the NBA and MLB and all these other leagues operate. You can't just book a stadium and expect people to show up because you're claiming that there's professional volleyball. So we decided to take a new approach to it and really build it from the ground up, starting with the players across the country. And then here we are now in 2023, and we've gone from 5 teams initially to over 30 teams collectively between our different tiers and our men's and women's division. And we have just so much growth ahead of us that we're really excited about.
So before I turn this over to Fran to get started to dig into what you guys are really up to, I just have one question for Lloy. The word pineapple. I have been told that there used to be a play in volleyball that was labeled pineapple. Are you aware of that? And is that in any way why you've named your club Pineapple Volleyball Club?
So there is a particular shot in indoor volleyball, which is called the pineapple, which happened for the very first time in 1991 in Honolulu, Hawaii at the men's national Final Four, and was performed by a 6'9", then curly-haired kid out of Woodburn, Indiana. That was our first Final Four, which you alluded to. We had finally beat Ball State. That Final Four was in Honolulu that year.
I see.
And as you know, as a 6'9" setter, to say I dumped the ball a lot would probably be an understatement. I would say me and Javier Gaspar probably were similar in numbers. As you know, Javi dumped the ball a lot too for Penn State. So we played the semifinal against defending champion USC, and they had all 3 defenders on the 10-foot line, guys. I tell you now, they were ready, any tight pass. So a ball comes tight, and instead of using your left-handed dump, and I kind of just take it and pop it over left back's head in the corner. I'd never done it before. I couldn't tell you why I did it that time. Another ball came, and I just kind of popped it over in the corner and popped it. 9 later, Denny Johnson, who you know, a Ball State volleyball alum, Mick, stands up and goes, God, Lloyd's lobbing pineapples out there, because we had just visited the Dole Plantation on a little trip the day before. So I got home, I got with George Martin, another Monroeville alum, and said, he was our family lawyer. I said, George, I know I'm only 20 years old, but can I trademark the word pineapple? He goes, yes, you can. So I trademarked it all the way back in 1991 and have used it for anything volleyball related for me since.
Wow, that's more
That is a great
information.
story.
More information than I wanted. But Fran, you better take hold of this. So this is going south real quick.
Breaking news.
Yeah, and by the way, just to let you know that Barnett still owes me $0.25 every time he says it on ESPN. I'm still waiting for that check. Yeah.
Absolutely. You make him pay up also.
Yeah, you better get your royalties on that one for sure. Hey, Lloy and Tim, first off, kudos to you guys for allowing and making this thing fly and giving it life and taking it off. Can you just share about the championship, how it works, where things are going in terms of your championship season this year?
Yeah, so actually, as most of you guys know, last weekend we hosted our VLA Cup, which is actually slightly different than our actual championships. As you know, kind of what we mentioned, we have both Tier 1 and 2 divisions within the Volleyball League of America. So our Tier 1 championships actually are in a month. That's what we're hosting at AAU Nationals in the beginning of July. The VLA Cup is a little bit different. How we host 4 cups throughout the season. Each division hosts a cup of their own. So there's a West Division, a Central Division, and an East Division Cup. And what those individual cups look like are, say for the Central Division Cup, when we host, all of the teams, all the Tier 1 teams from that conference are required to be present. It's considered one of our division or conference events. And then it's an open invitation to any Tier 2 team that wants to come in and compete. So each cup ends up looking a little bit different. This past year at the Central Division Cup, we ended up having about 15 teams collectively, so 12 Tier 2, and then the 3 in Tier 1 within the division. And then at the end of towards the end of the season, we have the VLA Cup, which was this past weekend, where every tier 1 team is required to be there. So we had all 8 tier 1 teams there, and then essentially as many tier 2 teams as we're able to fit, given the location and the number of teams that we have. So we ended up with 28 tier 2 teams on the men's side, and 8. This was our first year hosting a women's division as well, and we had 8 women's teams that participated in the weekend too.
So a lot of
And
these, when we talk about the tiers, Fran, is just the level of commitment. So if you're a tier 1 team, you're committed to the whole VLA season. You don't get to pick and choose when you show up, and you're accumulating points just like the European or South American leagues do over time to qualify for this event in July. Meanwhile, the 2-tier teams who have a smaller buy-in to the league can kind of pick and choose based on their personnel, based on their players, and kind of go to certain events they want to, but not have the full commitment of the league.
That's awesome. What's the format of play at these events? Is it a series? Is it a bracket? Is there pool play? What's involved with it? Is it just a single elim?
It is pool play and then bracket play afterwards. And so the teams that are coming in get ranked or seeded based on the amount of points that they've accumulated from past matches. So where tier 1 also has points that add to our season, tier 2 teams do the same. So if they participate in the Central Division Cup, they get a certain amount of points for a 3-0 sweep, for whether it's 3-1, and then that helps guide the seeding as they go into tournaments like the cups.
Yeah,
And you mentioned sorry, Lloyd, you mentioned your championship is going to be at AAUs. That's a pretty cool connection.
Yeah, I mean, it's like Lloyd said in the very beginning, we're connected to all the different volleyball organizations in the U.S. And we love the fact that we're able to kind of be the bridge between those different groups and just get everybody on the same page as far as recognizing the need for the growth of adult volleyball in the U.S. And it, being at the events like AAU Nationals gives us a fantastic trampoline to get exposure to all the juniors and let them know that there is opportunity for them to play beyond college in the U.S. And not have to leave their home and friends to go overseas and then return to potentially start a career after they go through that process.
So this is AAU during AAU Boys Nationals?
Correct.
This year, there'll be over 1,000 boys teams at AAUs, I'm told. Is that correct?
There will be. Actually, I was just appointed on the executive committee for AAU volleyball. Joe Gura, who is the president of that, along with Joe Jablonski, who runs that event, kind of asked me to come on board just to be a Midwest type sounding board, especially as you guys may or may not know, now that the state of Indiana has passed boys high school volleyball, already over 90 teams in year 1. It's amazing. Obviously, all the clubs now, and some have already done it, like Academy and Munciana, but now all the clubs are adding boys as well. And so just a huge growth. I know the committee had to go to Disney and get 10 more courts just to try to fill in all the boys coming. And so we're super excited. Obviously, JVA we've been in front of with Bree Schunzel and Jenny Hahn have allowed us to play at Summerfest and Worlds, but now to be at AAUs in front of the boys and that growing, I mean, what an amazing opportunity for us, but also for them to see hopefully what they'll be like someday.
How many teams from VLA will be in Orlando playing in your championships?
The top 6 qualifying teams from Tier 1 go to the championships at AAUs.
Is there a women's championship too?
Not at this stage. So because this was our first year incorporating a women's division, it's, for lack of a better phrase, sort of a soft opening where we're kind of creating the opportunity and laying down the structure to really grow the women's side the way that we have grown the men's side. The difference in how we're starting with them and how we started the men's is that when we started the men's, we already had that core group of 5 men's teams who had been around for over a decade. So at this year, and then likely next year too, we're going to see there'll be fewer events on the women's side than there are for men's. But the big part of that is we're giving the women an opportunity to form their teams and create a plan and start to create their financial base so that they can support themselves before they're required to commit to a larger season.
Lloy, you mentioned about the Tier 1 and Tier 2, and you used the word commitment. How does a team move from Tier 2 to Tier 1? What is that level of commitment that's necessary? Is it financial? Is it time? Is it players? Is it points? Combination? What is it?
So as of right now, there's a couple of different things, and Tim, please correct me if I'm wrong. One is you have to commit to the entire season, as I mentioned before. Two, you are allowed up to 20 men on your roster, but then have to identify 15 at each event. The next thing is there is a higher buy-in. For example, the monetary amount for us tier 1 teams to buy in each year to the league is much less significant than tier 2 teams who just buy in to be in an event, if that makes sense. So you can pick and choose. And so you're not out of pocket as a tier 2 team who Tim has said, who is still trying to establish their infrastructure, establish their local and regional sponsors, establish their team. So it's just not like your normal, no offense to the Lloyd Ball Classic or the Doble, where you just throw people together and go play and hope it all works out. We want this to be organized before we introduce them into our infrastructure of the VLA.
So if I had the cash and wanted to buy in, and I had 20 players that could commit to the whole season, I could have a VLA team in Houston.
There is a little bit more to the vetting process. So you would have to go through, you would have to participate in a certain number of events in the season or two leading into it. And you'd have to accumulate enough points to earn that opportunity to go tier 1. So we've really—
How many points do I need?
How much time you got? No, we have really tried to create a structure where teams have the ability to kind of build their program both financially and player wise at a pace that works best for them. So most teams that are going to be making that jump are going to make that jump at least over the course of 2 seasons. It's unlikely that they'll make that jump in a single one. And part of that is they have to, really show and demonstrate and prove to us and themselves that they have a roster that can commit to that full season of tier 1. And also, obviously, a factor is going to be making sure that they have the level of talent and ability to compete in the level of in tier 1 as well.
The big difference, Bill, I think is, we understand that these leagues need money to function. Okay. And trust me, we're not opposed to money. Okay. Having said that, it's not sustainable to just say, hey, I got the money, I got guys, let's come and play, because there's been no buy-in from those guys. They've not committed to 2-tier for the 1 year or 2 years. Those things aren't sustainable. They don't last. It's never happened with a pro league where we just throw tons of money at it and think it all works out. And so we've just really been painstakingly slow to make sure that we have this infrastructure, we have this process, we have these manuals, we have all these things, these steps that you have to take so that hopefully this actually lasts.
Yeah, see, that's what I was getting at. I want people to understand that this is a real league with real structure.
Well, this is
any teams from Division 2 moving up to Division 1 soon?
Not this season. Last year, we had our first team make that transition. It was Chicago Swede, went from tier 2 to tier 1, which brought us to 8 tier 1 teams. At the end of this season, we don't have any teams that are ready to make that jump. And by that, I mean, when I say they're not ready, I mean, we have a couple teams that would be able to make that jump based on their qualifications and the commitment they've put in thus far, but they've decided that it's not the right time for them to make that jump. Some of it because they haven't had the time to create the financial base for their team. Others because they, while may have a fantastic level of talent on their team, are unable to get that group together to compete more than 2 or 3 times in the season. So this year we will not, to circle back, we will not have any teams moving up, but we expect our next one to move up next year.
All right, so this next question, it's for either Tim or Lloy. What makes the VLA a pro league? And maybe you started to answer it with the different tiers, I'm not sure.
Well, we've never been shy about using the phrase grassroots professional league in the way that we talk about ourselves and the way that we promote ourselves. And that, I think, is really the best explanation of how we operate. Right now, for the tier 1 teams, players and teams have some of their basic travel expenses covered as they go from competition to competition. But in most cases, the players are not receiving an actual salary for their competition just yet. That is kind of a part of our process and a part of our plan to step by step continue to cover more and more expenses and build to the point of having players receive compensation, and with the end goal of them receiving a compensation that is something that they could actually live off of. And
Do you have a revenue sharing plan?
we do, yes.
Mick, we're kind of a, people talk about, when they talk about these leagues, about being centralized or being decentralized. We're kind of a combination of both. So with our YouTube channel and with the money that's created through teams coming to events, obviously that's centralized for the VLA that helps us cover costs to run the events like Tim just ran in Chicago. As you know, referees aren't cheap, buildings aren't cheap, all those kind of things. And then eventually we hope some of that money will trickle down like it does in the NFL and NBA to the tier 1 teams. Likewise, it's decentralized the fact that all these teams have our absolute blessing to get regional and local sponsors. If you want to light up your jerseys like the European jerseys, we love it. If you want to have guys being paid extra money through regional sponsors, that's okay. So we're just trying to maximize the amount of attention, not only online, only out in public, but financially for this league and for these players to keep creating these revenue streams so that eventually, sooner than later, as Tim alluded to, there are salaries for all these people.
So if I can be a devil's advocate here, and let me throw this out. I have seen in my lifetime this go from scratch, basically, where we played in the YMCAs and that sort of thing, all the way to what we have today. I see JVA taking over the educational arm of volleyball across the country. I see your league possibly looking the same as the way we used to play open ball, sponsored by the regions, meaning the regions were part of USA Volleyball. You had to qualify through the region that had the most people got the most teams entered, and that sort of thing. Now I see this looks like, and your men's side is representing almost the entire country. From what I see on your website, you've got teams from Hawaii, you've got teams from Connecticut, you've got teams from Florida. You really have a great representation, but it's like a regional representation like we used to have at USAV Nationals. So what makes you guys different than what USAV is doing, or are they not doing this anymore? And now you're seemingly connected with AAU, and I looked on the USA website, and League One is seemingly sponsoring the USAV banquet. So I wonder if they're not associating with USAV. JVA, I thought, was associating with AAU, but now maybe somebody else, like Three Step. What's going on out here? Tell me, how does this all make sense?
I mean, the way that you're putting it, it definitely sounds like a who's on first situation going on here.
Exactly.
As much as I'd love to go into the full spiel, we'll probably go straight into answering the questions. I think the big difference that I see in our efforts and what USAV has done in the past is like PVL, for example, any team had to be directly sponsored by a region. And so each region only had one team. I think that was a great concept and a great idea, because naturally you're going to have you're going to want to have teams based in certain areas and certain regions. But for us, we see the benefit in letting those regions kind of form themselves instead of operating within the parameter of, say, a USAV region. We're literally allowing the opportunity for teams to form in different communities where the volleyball is strongest. And it's not always going to be in the cities that you guess. Like there's, for example, one of our tier 2 teams that's making a lot of headway in building a really strong program, both in their team and in the community itself, is Madison Inferno. And Madison is not a city that you would think might be the origin of a future professional team, but they're really building off of the community that exists and creating a framework that they can grow with as a juniors program and an adult program. And yeah, I just think we're creating an opportunity where we are, as Lloy has said in the past, Switzerland, and we're able to and open to participate and work with any organization that wants to get involved, because everybody sees the benefit of growing volleyball across the board.
But even Switzerland has to be part of the FIVB. And the FIVB is an organization that controls volleyball worldwide. In fact, they put dates out of which when you can't run your league if you're going to be part of the FIVB World Volleyball, and players matriculate from your leagues to the national teams of almost all the national teams across the country. And the local USAV, which is part of the FIVB and is the organization, the only organization that can certify players to go to the Olympics and international events, seems to be in position to, in some way, dictate what's going on, or, as we've been looking, seems to not want to dictate anything except the international games. So how does your league fit in with this worldwide concept, and what the national organization has for your players getting to the national team and being represented overseas in various leagues?
What I'm about to say in no way is a slight on USAV. This is just how I see things, that I'm going to kind of respond to your question, Mick. You know, since 1994, I have been promised that if I win a gold medal, there'll be a pro league by USA Volleyball, and there isn't one. Okay, so USA Volleyball has kind of sit back, and especially now as all these leagues are trying to form, this is my opinion once again, okay, that they're kind of waiting to see, right, what happens. Because in the end, Mick, you're right. You look at any professional league, whether the Super League in Russia that I played, you look at Serie A in Italy I played, they're all absolutely directly connected to the national team programs. They're the feeder systems. They're the college volleyball of us, right? That's how they do it. Yet, there isn't any connection established. Now, you mentioned that maybe Pro 1 is starting to maybe work with USAV a little bit, but the legitimacy of any league throughout the world needs the national governing bodies, I'm not going to say approval, but definitely collaboration, right, in order to be successful. The only thing I can think of is that they are sitting back and letting all these dogs eat until something comes out of it. And then I'm pretty sure they'll hop on top of one of those, and that'll be your pro league. We're just doing the best we can to be the most viable candidate for that, because we believe, especially the women's league, you would think is an easy thing to start. Gosh knows, you know, Mick, there's hundreds of thousands of young ladies playing, yet we've not been overly successful starting that. The men who just want to play, you know, who've never had a pro league here, you know, only 20 D1 programs in the country, or give or take 1 or 2, yet 3 gold medals, like all that is there. But we need someone, I think, like us, who has the infrastructure, the like-minded, to show, whether it be USAV and its affiliates and its partners, AAU, JVA, you name them, that, hey, this is the way, this is the system that you need to get behind.
You probably misspoke there for a second, because the old timers that played in the Winston League, the men's professional league in Southern California back in the 70s and 80s, would probably want to jump on that. But you're right in that regard. So what is your league's relationship with USAV, with the idea that you maybe want to bring foreign players into your league, or you may want to have some of your players go to our national team?
Yeah, I mean, right now we're kind of open for all those things, you know, Mick. Right now we have all kind of players from all different places. We're not really being, you know, dictated to by any national governing body or anything else. I don't know if that's because of whatever reasons, but right now, if you want to bring in Marcus Nielsen from Sweden, you can bring him in. And play on the VLA. You know, we have foreign players on the team. We have domestic players on the team. We try to keep the rest of the team kind of based in the regions where they're from, just so that we have name recognition and branding opportunities. But in the end, if you look, none of these leagues have really been given any direction by our national governing body. They're all trying to kind of figure it out themselves. And then hopefully at the end, everyone will play nice.
So you don't have to pay a transfer fee for one of those players to come in and play in your league?
No.
Doesn't that sound weird to you guys?
Sounds very weird.
Yeah, interesting.
But since the league is not sanctioned by the national governing body, since there's technically not a salary base at this point in time, I'm not sure some of those things apply. Eventually, we hope they do apply, Mick. Eventually, we hope we're functioning just as everybody else does.
Sure.
Until that happens,
Well, so your league will advance and grow. We're asking some hard questions on purpose because we really think there's a place for a men's professional league. We'd love to see you be successful. We'd like to have people understand what's going on because there are people out there that want to jump in. If you've been to the Collegiate Club Men's National Championship, they draw almost 14,000 for the finals. So there's enough collegiate boys out there playing that want to continue to play and go into a professional league. Even though it's not a collegiate league sponsored by the intercollegiate system, it's sponsored by the intramural club system. There are plenty of men out there playing. There just needs to be a place for them to go. And then when you start getting those people, that's when USAV will come knocking at your door. The FIVB may show up. The World Volleyball Television Channel would be nice to show up and want to broadcast your matches across the country, and that may cause you to change your structure a bit also. You're basically a weekend structure as opposed to a match structure, right?
Correct. Yeah, the way that we operate within even the tier 1 is we have a kind of cup style, or like European cup style, where the teams in each conference come together for a round robin or double round robin over the course of the weekend, as a way to keep cuts or maintain costs at a lower level.
Sure.
While we're building the financial base of the league.
Sure.
All this discussion takes, all this discussion kind of takes us to Franny's question.
Yeah, and congrats on the sustainability, but where does it go from here and how do you continue to grow it? I think that's, not many people have been able to do even what you've done thus far. And so how do you keep going and where does it go from here?
Well, I think what you're going to be seeing over the next couple of years is a continual incline in the number of teams that are participating in the league, as different pockets of the country get involved, and as we get more teams getting involved, the competition level gets higher, which will draw in a higher level competition as well. And eventually, I think within the next 5-6 years, we'll be at the point where players will be leaving college and immediately joining onto teams across the country.
I guess the biggest difference, guys, is just that, as Team Point, listen, now that the women are excited, we're going to continue to build that. We'll have more men's teams every year. We just felt like if we built a product, someone, whether it be the national governing body, whether it be sponsors, will come in and help us run.
Well, I'm not so sure, Lloyd, that's going to happen. I mean, I think it's great what you, Tim, and the rest of the guys have created here, because honestly, in my opinion, it was the USVBA back in the day that really had what you guys have now, and they let it go. They didn't take care of adult volleyball, and you guys have stepped in on your own and have done creating the same league that myself and Mick used to play in years ago.
Don't forget
right?
Bill. He's that old.
Bill, he might be that old, but he didn't seem to understand this whole concept on Monday. All right. I mean, it's tremendous. I just wonder, though, if you guys might be better off. I mean, you're starting women. Maybe you should just stay focused on the men. Just a thought, because you got 3 other potentially pro leagues that are coming in for the women, but nobody's doing anything with the men, and you guys have it going. Actually, you're further along with your structure than any of these women leagues that are trying to start.
Yeah, and I think our plan from the beginning has been to stay true to what we see as the right path for us. And like you said, for our men's side specifically, we're open to the possibility if somewhere down the line USAV or FIB comes in and wants to talk about a way to combine forces, great. But really, the way that I see us moving forward is continuing in the way that we are operating now. Down the line, there's a real chance that we'll get to a point where we will transition expansion into individual exhibition matches, like New York versus Chicago, rather than our weekend competitions like we just kind of described. But we're not gonna make that jump unless it is the right move for the league and for the teams and for the players. And as far as the incorporation of the women's side here, we do see it as a different effort. Like we haven't yet really labeled tier 1 and tier 2 stipulations on the women's side right now, because at our core we are a men's league, and we want to grow the sport as a whole and open up an opportunity for women to participate. But until we get to the point where it might make sense to attempt to form that kind of tier 1 level on the women's side, we're just going to continue to give them an opportunity to form teams and play. We don't necessarily see League One and pro volleyball as competitors, because we're trying to do something very different than what they're working to achieve right now.
As a side note, both of you guys run clubs. Does everybody that has a team run a club of some sort in your league?
So not everybody. So like for the Icemen, for example, we're connected to a juniors club in the Chicago area, but we don't actually run the club itself. Lloyd's is a little bit more directly connected, where he has his, where they're like, by business, they are immediately connected. Sorry. There are maybe 50% of the teams that are involved in the league are connected directly to a juniors club in their area, but it's not a requirement by any means for a team to participate. Obviously, there are advantages if you look at the European system to having that juniors base. One, in a means to be connected to the local community and grow kind of awareness for our efforts and for the team that you're creating. And two, obviously, there's a financial benefit to it as well, and having that kind of a more sound financial base to cover your team's costs as you're growing and developing a business for your team as well. But we really kind of see it as a choose your own adventure outside for the individual teams. Our goal ultimately is to go with a centralized funding method where the league itself will cover the base costs and expenses for the teams, and then allow the teams to create their own financial base to pay their players and kind of add whatever extra touches to the team, to the player experience within their program.
So your men's league is kind of a combination of the Pro Volleyball Federation concept and the League One concept. League One building from the base up, Pro Volleyball just getting their teams out there, getting an income base for them, looking for sponsorship and that sort of thing. And then we've got United Athletes as made for TV. Looks like a complete deviation from team concept to an individual concept.
Athletes Unlimited, you're talking about.
Yes, I'm sorry, Athletes Unlimited. And that's a third concept, all being women's leagues. You have taken for your men's league, looks like the best of everything, and put it together in hopes it will grow by leaps and bounds. And quite honestly, you have a sport in your sport is the fastest growing collegiate sport in the country right now. So why wouldn't you think it would be successful? I mean, I think if you build it, they will come right now. There's no reason to think that these men playing collegiately, either in the club system or in the intercollegiate system, don't want to continue to play.
I mean, first of all, I'd like to thank you for that soundbite and saying that we were the best combination of all the best aspects of the league. We really do kind of feel that way ourselves. We really are very invested in what we're creating here, and have thought long and hard about why past attempts at leagues have failed and what they've failed to recognize in just the way that volleyball operates within the country. The unfortunate truth in a lot of ways is that volleyball has been kind of a third tier sport within the country, and not by the amount of players competing, but just the way that the general population looks at it, as far as kind of watching it in a professional manner. And so you can't there's like, I really do like the quote, like you said, if you build it, they will come. And there's kind of two sides to that. One of the struggles that past leagues have had, where they've just gone, hey, I've got this funding, we can start a league, we'll create teams in the city, we'll book this stadium, and then people will come. And then people didn't come because they didn't really have any connection to those communities. They were just like, hey, we have pro volleyball now, come and watch. And nothing really came of it. But what we're doing is kind of the opposite here, where we are taking strong communities across the country, helping guide them in creating teams and high level volleyball within those communities, and then using those communities to kind of grow the league and the teams itself. And I really do believe that we have a unique opportunity to do something that has never really been done in the States to this extent.
One of the biggest differences is that we formed this because we want to play. Okay. I can't play anymore. Not very well anyway. But these guys want to play.
I saw you lost to the Iceman. What's that all about?
I know they've had my number for a couple of years. Thanks for bringing it up. But these men want to play volleyball, right? And so that's our first priority, is let's get them in a spot where we can play. Let's not first thing being, what's my rate of return? How am I going to make money on it? I've always believed it, whether it be building BSA, building the club, starting in Little O Japanese League and working my way up to Russia. If you're good at what you do, financial reward will come. And that's how we're approaching this thing. In the end, it makes me happy to see guys playing. I have no doubt in the next 3 to 5 years, we'll have a heck of a good league.
See, the Winston League was supported by dollars from NBA, played in the Forum. It's called the Winston League because Winston Cigarettes sponsored it. But the players had their hands out the whole time wanting to be paid. And so that went only as far as the money. So it was money up front, not the desire to play. We all, Bob and I and Bill, even Fran, would have played in that league given an opportunity. Didn't even need to be paid, but they wanted it to be the best players, the highest level players, the players that were competing for the national team, and they thought that's the way they'd sell it. It was pretty competitive. There were only 4 teams, but you should research that a little bit also to see where that ended up and why it failed, because that's the only league that I know of that's been just men, not co-ed, but just men that tried to form early to help our national team do well as become a income producing event for male volleyball players.
So the last thought before we let these guys go, Mick, it seems like, from what Tim was just explaining, you guys have been doing the whole grassroots thing now for a number of years, and it's growing, and it has some teeth to it because it's associated with clubs and gives the opportunity for players to have employment, through the club. It seems like you almost want to now partner with somebody like Pro Volleyball Federation that has the dollars to fund maybe the guys as a pro team, paying a salary and playing in all these cities and start doing match play. I mean, have you guys thought about that at all, or approaching anybody with that concept?
Absolutely. I mean, we've always been open to kind of any and all partners moving forward, particularly people with like-minded missions like pro volleyball and League One. We're currently operating under the assumption that we're not counting on that opportunity happening. Like I said, our goal and kind of our mission has been to create something that is self-sustaining and can operate within itself, and then while staying open-minded and available for greater partnerships and more financial opportunities, like partnering with some of those leagues.
Lloyd, you have any thoughts?
Bob, I think like Tim said, we wanted to have this. We wanted to have this nucleus of what our idea was for this league. And like anybody, if you're not willing to grow, not willing to listen, but not compromise, I think you'll never be as successful as you can be. I think there's a lot of like-minded people with the same ideas of us, and we're absolutely willing to have those conversations with people. But we want to make sure that our product is good. We want to make sure that our infrastructure is good. We want to make sure the board is running things good. And then adding pieces, whether they be partnerships financially, partnerships with leagues, those conversations we'd love to have, but we don't want to rely on that for the growth of our league. We want to rely on our main objective, which is to grow the side of men's volleyball here in the United States and develop a pro league. And then as things come on, then hopefully more good things are attached to that.
Well, you guys have certainly been consistent with your approach to this and your enthusiasm. What happens when you guys are not running this? Who's going to sustain this or how is it going to be sustained? Because it seems like it needs your enthusiasm to continue to grow and develop.
I would absolutely agree. It does require a high level of enthusiasm to continue and grow and develop. And I would invite all of you to come to one of our cups in this next season, because the moment you come to one of those cups and start interacting with some of the teams and the people that are involved at all levels, both tier 1 and tier 2, you'll see that there is no lack of enthusiasm and no lack of passion for what we are doing. I have the utmost confidence that we are already connecting with future generations of people who are going to be running the VLA when we're done.
Bob, I
It's
guess
been awesome.
we take the show there, huh?
There
We
you
would
go.
mobile show. We'd love to have you on site. Besides our 7 board members, I think we do a great job of reaching out and communicating with all the tier 1 reps, all the tier 2 reps. So kind of this trickle down of information, I think also empowers them to make sure they understand the VLA is theirs as much as it is mine, as much as it's Tim's, as much as in the entire board. The board listens to all recommendations. We talk every week. We make decisions based on what's best for our players, based on what's best for the growth of our league. And so I feel like, Tim, like the passion we speak with it about trickles down right down to the tier 1 reps, tier 2 reps, right down to the libero on the worst team we got.
Well, guys, thanks very much for coming on and kind of explaining the VLA to everyone, all our listeners out there, and really kind of clearing up some of the questions that we had, about what you're doing. And it's phenomenal. I want to just thank you very much for everything you guys do.
Yeah.
Thank you so
And
much
like your
for having us
suggestion,
on.
like your suggestion for us to come and do a show at one of your events. That would be pretty darn cool. We could interview the guys and the gals and really get a hometown feel for what's happening with the league.
Well, maybe next week we have to get AAU, have Joe on, both Joes on, and convince. Actually, they came up with the idea about going down and doing the show at the AAU championships. This is a perfect thing. Talk about.
It would be at your championships in Orlando. That would be pretty exciting.
Well, tell them the newest member of the executive board recommends a thumbs up for that. Yeah.
Well, thanks,
Good
you
luck,
guys. We'll let you guys get out of here. We know you got tons to do. While we transition into our buzz reaction and kind of just talk a little bit about the things we covered today.
Thank you very much.
Lloyd, I'm going to go teach all my setters the pineapple today at practice. So
All right.
we're going to
It's
be
a winner.
pineappling all over the gym.
That'll cost you a quarter
send
every
it.
time.
Yep.
I know. My $1.25 is in the mail.
Thanks, guys.
Thank
Thanks
you.
so much for having us on, guys.
You're
All righty.
welcome. Thanks for
All right.
coming on.
All right, let's transition into our buzz reaction. Fran, why don't we start with you? What's your thoughts?
Well, I think it's incredible. And the thing that struck me the strongest is the fact that they talk about that the guys want to play. And they're doing it because these guys love the sport and they're providing a platform opportunity for guys to continue to play. And I agree with Mick and all of you guys with the USA Volleyball. I was somebody that benefited and played after college, and we love to play. And there's no avenue for anybody to do that. You have to go for the women's side, go overseas and try to find a place to play, and you have to be good enough. And I think the tiering system is really smart. I think they have great opportunity for people of different levels. And I think their model works. I agree. I'm surprised some of these new pro leagues aren't, and maybe they are studying this model from behind and not really sharing, but they should be, because nobody's been able to sustain a league for 5 years and have a plan for the future and that be moving forward in a positive direction, except these guys up to this point.
Well, it seems like League One may be following their lead in the way they're approaching it. Because it seems like they're associating themselves in every different city with a club that is sustaining. But again, that's just women's volleyball. That's why I thought maybe it would be good for these guys to just stay focused on the men, because nobody's doing the men right now.
Right?
What's
I
your
would agree
thoughts
with
on
you.
I think that they need numbers and they need income. Even though we have now 3 national championships, maybe 4 national championships in club for different organizations running national championships. There still aren't enough tournaments to handle all the teams. I don't think they lose anything except having to manage the numbers that they're going to get with this. And that's where I have a question that I don't know if it's sustainable or not, in that once these 2 guys, I mean, Lloyd's 51. I'm not sure how old Tim is, I think a bit younger, but at some point you run out of this energy to spend every waking minute either on the phone or thinking about what's going on or that sort of thing. It happens to coaches just in collegiate women's volleyball. They're on the go all the time. So how is the torch going to be passed, and how are they going to find this enthusiasm in the next set of leaders that's coming along? That's where I worry that if they don't come up with a revenue source, like, why not go to United Athletes and say, can we get a men's side of this that's being supported by television money? I mean, basically, they're not making any money. They're going on TV, and the sponsors are hoping that this will pay off for volleyball, softball, and what, lacrosse, Bill? I forget the third one, but something like that. So that's one way. We got Kevin Garnett and people throwing 15 to 17 million at the new Pro League Foundation, the Volleyball Pro Federation. That league is got outside sponsorship like football league or a basketball league, and then you got the European model that League One is purporting to put together, but they have no teams yet. I mean, there's a lot of talk and a lot of hot air. In fact, we're going to have League One on
June 7th.
on our June 7th show. 2 of their representatives are going to come on with a big announcement, they say, and tell us where they are in getting ready to open in 2025. So we probably need to get Pro Volleyball Federation back on also and see where they are, because they promised 8 franchises. We've only now heard about 4. I understand Dallas is about ready to come out, but that's rumor and innuendo. Nobody can give us a straight story on that. So that would be 5 franchises that we know about. So that's
and the first league you were talking about was Athletes Unlimited, correct?
Athletes Unlimited. What did I call them?
You call them something else, but I mean, it's hard to keep track. We got so many.
Yeah,
pro leagues
I'm
starting
confused because and we have a lot of players, but is the level going to be the level that people want to watch? And so there's a commitment there. And then Bill's been all over this international thing, and that's why I wanted to bring it up, that you can't just go overseas and play. United States asks for money because you're part of the United States play. If you come from Slovenia, they want money for you to play in the United States. I mean, everybody's extracting their pound of flesh here. So this gets to be pretty confusing when it's all said and done.
Well, to add to the confusion in your thinking,
maybe I'm just confused.
Well, for everybody, John Cook was asked, what's the best pro league in the world for women? And he said, NCAA Division I women's volleyball.
Yeah, I think
he
that's
said,
right.
He said, we pay the most. We have the largest number of support. We have the best coaching staffs. We have the best training staffs. We have the best doctors. We have the best support. We have the best equipment. No other women's league in the world is funded better than NCAA Division I women's volleyball.
The only thing the other leagues have, and there's only 2 of those leagues, as they have the cream of the crop athletes, a female.
Well, exactly. NCAA Division I women's volleyball is 300 and some teams.
But
when you only have 18 teams, you can have the cream of the crop.
Yeah. So just to keep that in mind. But I noticed in Italy, what do they sell? They sell out maybe 3,000, 4,000 seats for a match.
Yeah, 3,000, 4,000 seats
Only
for a
in
match.
Poland where you're getting 21,000 for a men's match.
That's a
And
men's match, not the
Uh,
women's match.
you can get 9,000 for a women's match in Poland if they're playing the right teams. And so, it's
But Nebraska's getting 15,000 for every game. So
only if they
Nebraska's
average their
got-
87,000 football stadium fans.
Is going to have 70,000 next year in their stadium for a volleyball match.
Yeah.
that's unbelievable.
70,000. And women's volleyball now has free agency. So when you talk about the cream of the crop, potentially all the best players could end up in the best 2 conferences or the best 3 conferences here pretty soon, because I might be a 6'5" kid who's underlooked, end up at Charlotte, and then I put my name in the portal, and next year I'm at Ohio State. So what could easily happen is we could see Division I volleyball even breaking into tiers where the what we call the mid majors are supplying the best players to the Power 5, and we end up with our 22 and under pro league for collegiate women's volleyball.
Well, on that note, we're just about out of time. So we want to, invite all our listeners to come back next week. We're going to continue in this vein, with the pro leagues and national teams, and trying to keep you up to date on what's going on in the world of volleyball.
And Bob, have people write in. Where can they send their questions to the show so that we can make sure we're on target with some of the other things that they'd like to know about?
Yeah, they could just send something to volleyballmastercoaches@gmail.com, and we can see what other areas people are interested in.
Wonderful. Good job, everybody.
Send us your questions. Go Lloy.